Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to In the Heights. So, we're going to keep this intro pretty brief, but just as a brief discussion about this, this is a movie that I am choosing to do. It's just come out, and I really wanted to check it out. I really wanted to react to it. I'm recording this later than I normally would, but time's been kind of messed up for me today, just for various reasons. So if it gets darker, that's why. But, so what is this movie about? Well, this is a movie from Lin-Manuel Miranda based on his stage play of the same name. And starring, oh God, what is his name? I had his name in my head too. He plays John Lawrence in Hamilton, or did. I don't think he's an active cast member anymore, but he's in this as the character Uznavi, who I don't know much of anything about because I don't know much of anything about this film in terms of plot and characters. But In the Heights, I believe, predates Hamilton in terms of the stage adaptation, the stage work. And when this was announced to be getting a movie, I was interested, especially with Miranda involved. So the trailer came out and it got me even more hyped. It was a really good trailer. It was really exciting. Anthony Ramos, that's his name, by the way. Anthony Ramos looks to be having a blast in it. And from what I could tell from the trailer, which I haven't watched any time recently, but from what I could tell from it, it has to do with these people on this in this neighborhood or on the street or something, kind of having to deal with kind of like everyday issues of living and whatnot. And that's kind of all I got from it. It kind of reminds me of Rent in a way. But I don't know the actual specifics or anything. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the characters are Latino American. Just in general, obviously Uznavi is, but I believe just generally speaking, the characters and everything in this film, almost from what I remember of the trailer, seem to center around that. But again, I might be wrong. So take that with a grain of salt. And it would make sense considering Lin-Manuel Miranda is Puerto Rican and everything. So, and I think we're just going to get this started, check out what it's actually about before I say stuff that might embarrass me. I'm just very excited. It is a musical, which is expected for Lin-Manuel Miranda and everything with his fame with Hamilton and all. And from the little bit of the music I heard in the trailer, it sounds really good, and it sounds, well, like Lin-Manuel Miranda's music, the kind of music you would hear in Hamilton or even Moana, which he did the music for. So I am very excited to see this. And it's a bit of a long film, too. So I will say, I don't know if BitChute is going to cooperate, because BitChute's been an issue lately. It'll be up on Google Photos no matter what, but BitChute has been giving me an issue with longer videos. Wolf of Wall Street would not process. And I had to eventually cut Wolf of Wall Street into 2 separate parts just to get it to process. And then even more recently, movies have been having issues on there. Like just with this week alone, I had issues getting Knives Out up on there, and luckily that's up there now. But it's just, I don't know if it's the length of the movies or something else, but it's been giving me issues. So letting you guys know ahead of time as you're watching this, There might only be one link in the description below for now. But keep looking. Keep checking back in if you want to watch it on BitChute rather than Google Photos. Keep checking back in because I will do my best to get a BitChute link up. So, that being said, let's get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, yeah, I didn't know going into this what this was going to be really about story or character-wise. I just knew the bare bones basics from the one trailer I had seen. And so this film, just summed up briefly, I would say, is about a group of people in a community who are following their dreams or trying to follow their dreams. That's the gist, the most basic gist of the film. But there's so much more depth to it than that. And while I'll say this isn't my favorite movie musical, I will say that pretty confidently, even including Hamilton, because even though that's technically just recordings of the stage production, I'm still counting it because it was released as a film on Disney Plus. Counting that as well, it's not my favorite. There are some parts in this movie that dragged. I will be completely open and honest about that. There are some parts that dragged, some parts that just felt slow and kind of not really boring, but it just felt hard to sit through a lot of the time. But when it got good, it got really good. There were certain plot points that I was more dialed into than others, and that's going to happen with a musical that follows so many characters and their different stories and whatnot. One of the plot points I was really invested in was, oh my god, there's so many characters and there's so many names. I have to try and remember each one. I believe it's Nina. Yeah, Nina was the one who had gone off to college, but found just instances of profiling and racism and just lacking of that community that she has in Washington Heights. So after coming home for the summer, she's decided to call it quits, to not want to go back, and trying to convince her father of that as well, even though he's trying to push his own dreams on her because, as we find out, he never even graduated high school. And so I was invested in this storyline just because of the connection with the idea of overbearing parents who try to force their own ideals on their children. And this is not like the worst case of this. I've heard of many more cases of this kind of situation that go far beyond. This never went into the realm of like real negative impacts on the characters like it really could have. There could have been a lot bigger of a falling out, for example, in regards to this, and a lot of just resentment towards each other. But luckily, it didn't go with that route. Luckily, Nina's father was a lot more understanding, I guess you could say. Even though there was one big blow up, one big fight, we see that it didn't really last. It didn't really stick. Um, Another part I was definitely like kind of focused in on was the relationships. Obviously, we had Benny and Nina, but we also had Usnavi and Vanessa. And the relationships were handled very well, even though at the very beginning, like right when you see them, it's like, oh yeah, you know that everything's gonna work out with both of these relationships. They're gonna work things out and they're gonna end up together and everything. And yeah, of course, that's what happens. But it's handled in a way where it feels still natural. Benny and Nina used to be together, but from what I gathered, Benny broke up with her when she moved away because I guess he wasn't confident that they could make a long distance relationship like that work. But it's clear by the end that they've not only reconnected and rekindled their relationship, but that he is now willing to work on that. And that he is willing to do whatever he can to help her see her dreams through, but also to trust in her and trust in himself to be able to work through that when not always physically together, especially during a lot of the year when she'll be off at school. And Usnavi and Vanessa was definitely more of the new relationship. Usnavi definitely had a big thing for her and was very awkward and shy around her. Thanks to help from Sonny, he was able to get a date and everything, but you could see how things go wrong as he just does not know how to handle it. And during the dance scene, they both try to make each other jealous, and then once they actually are about to dance together, Usnavi just leaves her on the dance floor to get her a shot, not listening to her. And just like with Benny and Nina, it does all wrap up. It does the tensions between them don't stick too long. They do manage to make up, and they do manage to make it work. Eventually, by the end, as we see, they're married and have a daughter. Um, I think in a lot of movies, musical or otherwise, relationships do just like catch me, I guess you could say. I get very hooked into those parts of the stories because I like relationships. I like romanticism. That kind of stuff it appeals to me. Now, obviously, there's a point where it gets a little too schmoozy and just gets really like cringy almost. A lot of like Hallmark romance movies, for example. But it's like I like it when a movie like this that isn't technically about the romance can handle it in a very realistic and believable way. Neither of these romances felt cringy. Neither of them felt like they were overbearing or just weird or just really over the top with the schmaltziness. They felt natural, both with the ups and downs. Um, and just going off of that, just the characters in general in this film were really likable. Um, Probably the highlights for me outside of Usnavi, because main character, he has a lot of screen time, and yeah, there was a lot of split screen time too. But he's the main character. He's focused on a lot more. So outside of Usnavi, some of my favorite characters would definitely be Benny. Like Benny just really stood out to me. He almost reminded me of Leslie Odom Jr.'s performance as Aaron Burr in Hamilton, um, but also a little less, obviously a little less uptight in terms of the character. He was definitely a lot more fun loving, a lot more friendly, a lot more romantic. But I just loved his energy. He had this energy about him that was just really fun. Um, and Nina was really great as like this just strong, independent female character kind of archetype in a way. Um, and yeah, that's kind of been made into an archetype in and of itself because it's like, oh, you have the strong female character in this movie or this show, and it's like a lot of people will say like, oh, that's basically a trope, and that it doesn't really amount to much. That you have to do more than that, and they did more than that with Nina. Like, yeah, there was definitely that aspect of her, but she has a story. She has a story, she has dreams, she has an identity within this that makes it feel more complex than just strong woman. Um, Abuela was just insanely likable. And obviously that made her death hit hard. And she was just, it's kind of like what was shown in the film. It's like everybody loved her, everybody cared for her. Her death shook this community. And as a viewer, I felt that. Because she was kind of like this glue holding them all together in a way, which is why we saw them kind of just fall apart after her death. Until eventually they got a little party going, having fun. um, and there were some other characters too throughout this. The salon women, Nina's father, and so on and so forth. Lin-Manuel Miranda is the water guy. Or, well, actually, it wasn't really water. It was more snow cones, but still. It says here piragua, which is a Puerto Rican shaved ice dessert, shaped like a cone. So basically, it's a snow cone, but obviously with some differences and all. But yeah, he was fun even as just a little like minor cameo, kind of strewn throughout. And yeah, I think that the best way to describe this, the best way to explain how it felt to watch this movie would be joy. It was joyful, it was fun, it was entertaining. And yeah, it did have some slow parts. It did have some points that did kind of draw back on that a little bit. But for most of the film, it was very entertaining. It was very fun. But the final thing I want to talk about here, because this is a musical, I have to talk about the music. And I'll be honest, this is the one point in this film, the one part of this movie, that kind of disappointed me a little. Like, there were a couple songs that were really good and entertaining. The song In the Heights itself was fantastic. But most of the movie, for most of the film, the music was okay. But just okay. There was nothing that I would say was outright bad or anything. None of the music was like terrible or was hard to listen to or unbearable or anything like that. But very little of it was actually really great. And I think it's disappointing because of knowing Hamilton, because of knowing Lin-Manuel Miranda's work in Hamilton and in Moana and whatnot. It's like knowing his work, writing music and everything. It's like I wanted the music here to be so much better than it was, and I was thinking and hoping it would be, but it wasn't. Again, it wasn't bad. None of it was bad. But most of it was just okay. Most of it was just passable. It didn't have the oomph. It didn't have the for lack of a better word, the spice of Lin's other works. It felt more reserved. And that's fine. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's just a personal preference, but it just didn't it didn't hook me in as much. It didn't hook me in. There was some music that was really good for other reasons, like the emotional connection. But there was very little music in this film that really made me as excited and pumped as it did in Hamilton or Moana. And I'm just a little disappointed by that because I felt like the music could have just been better. And I understand that obviously Hamilton is presented in a much more bombastic, wild sense. I understand that Moana, it's a Disney movie. It's got to have a certain type of exciting, fun music. And that this film is more restrained comparatively from a plot perspective as well. That this movie is more held back and more about the meaning behind the songs. And in that regard, it did succeed. The songs they were steeped in great meaning and great depth. But for me personally, any song, whether in a musical or not, any music I listen to has to be fun to listen to, has to be entertaining to listen to, has to be more than just the meaning, has to be more than just the lyrics. Great lyrics are one thing, but if the song sounds boring otherwise, then no amount of good lyrics are going to make me excited to listen to that music. And you can have really fantastic music with the dumbest, most basic lyrics, too. For me, at least, the actual sound of the song matters just a bit more than the lyrics and the meaning. The lyrics and the meaning add depth to the rest of the music. And they're good and they're important to a degree. I don't argue that. But you can have both. Hamilton proved that. Moana proved that. I don't know if these songs were written like for the original play and whatnot before Hamilton and everything. I assume they were before Moana, but I don't know if that's the case. But I could almost see that being the case. Like maybe Lin wasn't as practiced as like he hadn't really become great at it yet. I don't know. But the music in here was definitely a little bit of a disappointment for me. And again, none of it was bad. None of it at all was bad. But it was a little disappointing compared to what I've heard from Lin-Manuel Miranda before. But otherwise, yeah, I really did enjoy this film. I enjoyed In the Heights for sure. It wasn't as exciting, fun, and just high quality as I was hoping for, admittedly, and I'll admit that. It didn't live up to all of my expectations and hopes, but it did its purpose. It told a good story with good, likable characters, and I enjoyed it. So I can't say that it failed. It definitely succeeded in that regard. And sorry for the lighting, as I noted in the pre-thoughts and everything. I started recording this much later than I normally would. It's just time has escaped me and everything today. And I wasn't even 100% confident if I was going to react to this or just watch it on my own and do a review. But in the end, I decided to, and I hope you enjoyed. I do hope you enjoyed the reaction. But again, sorry for how dark it is right now. It's like 7:40 p.m. And it's not like super dark outside, but once it starts getting dark out there, it gets really dark in here. There's not a lot of great lighting in this in this house. Just being honest. Um, but tell me your thoughts down below, and thank you all so much for tuning in. So for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See you all next time.